This is Captain Lincoln with Fireton Whiskey, and I'm bringing you part 2 of the Nutritional Psychology Warrior Wellness video series. So we're going to start where we left off. So we talked about in part 1 all the biological issues that come into play when it comes to our nutrition and food. And then we got into some of the behavioral and social kind of reinforcements of that. So now that we learned last time all of these things that are stacked against us to have good nutrition in our lives, we're going to talk about some strategies that we can do and implement in our daily lives in order to combat some of these biological and behavioral and social norms that are stacked against us. So it all begins with mindfulness. This is the major tool that I want you to take away from this nutritional psychology wellness videos. So what is mindfulness? It is a mental state that is focused on your awareness. So basically it's just being present. It's checking in with yourself and constantly doing that all day on a daily basis, but especially with the issues that have to do with food and nutrition. Because if you're trying to improve your health and your nutrition, then this is something that you need to really focus on being more mindful about. So this is a major strategy. So we're going to talk about a more eating psychology or mindful eating way of dealing with our food on a daily basis. So how many food choices do you think you make on a day? So when you hear the answer, you're probably going to be surprised because you're probably thinking, well, I eat maybe 3 times a day, maybe a snack. Maybe have some coffee in the morning, so about 5. So research shows that you make 200 food decisions daily. And so where does that number come from? So that means every bite of food that I take is a decision. Every decision that I make to maybe postpone eating, so I decide I'm not hungry and I postpone it, then that's a food decision. I decide to skip Starbucks in the morning, that's a food decision. I decide to get a pastry with my coffee, that's a food decision. So there's lots of tiny little food decisions you're making on a daily basis that add up to an average of around 200 choices. So you can see how this is actually a major decision that we make over and over and over again all day long. So those decisions can really add up. So if you're making more poor food decisions, then you're setting yourself up for failure. And the number one reason why we're not mindful or aware that we're making that many choices is that we're basically going through life detached. So most of us are kind of going through life in autopilot. You know, we get up at the same time, we take the same route to work, we drink the same coffee, we eat the same cereal. We're just kind of trudging along, doing what we need to do to get to the weekend, right? So I know that you've probably been driving somewhere, driving home from work, and you pulled into your driveway and you just like, oh my gosh, how did I get here? I don't even remember how I got here. I just completely was not aware of the drive. So that's what we're talking about with autopilot. So you are making major decisions about your life because driving is a major decision and it has a lot of responsibility. It can be very dangerous, but you're doing it basically in a coma. So you have the ability to do that, and we can self-sabotage by going through the motions in our life in autopilot. Conditioning. So we talked about in part 1, all the conditioning that we kind of are exposed to that reinforce some of our behaviors when it comes to food. So, whether it be social conditioning or, this is just a food I turn to that makes me feel better, or just, this is just the drive-through I go through every day and I never really think about the decision that I make. And then those unconscious decisions. So, you always order the same thing. You always you go through the grocery store, you always end up buying the same cereal. You never really think about it. There's no mindfulness going on there. And then we have habits that we create over time. So we just get used to doing things and we're in our comfort zone with those behaviors. And then, of course, distractedness. So I know that most of you, when you sit down to eat, you are doing something else, if not several other things. So you're watching TV or scrolling through your phone or checking email or doing work or talking to your kids, whatever it is, you're not really paying attention to your food, and you have, several other things going on. So you're not really in the present moment when you're eating. And then we talked about in part 1, the social connection to food. So from infancy to death, there's a lot of social reinforcement when it comes to food. So we're going to keep calm and focus on the basics. So we've talked about mindfulness and what that is. So that means checking in, being in the present moment. So we're going to talk about mindful eating. So there's a way of eating that can make you check in and continue to be mindful throughout the process. So this acronym is B.A.S.I.C.S, B-A-S-I-C-S. So belly check, assess your food, slow down, investigate your hunger, chew, and savor. So I'm going to go through each of these. So B, belly check for hunger. So when we eat, normally most of us are just eating on the clock, right? So morning time, you get up, you shower, you get dressed, and you eat your breakfast basically at the same time. Lunchtime, you eat about the same time. You come home, commute, and you eat about the same time. So we're not really checking in to see if we're hungry. It's really just the clock is telling us when to eat, and you follow that cue. So when you are actually checking in with yourself and doing the belly check for hunger, that means you're only eating when you're actually hungry. So are you actually hungry? How hungry are you? Are you really hungry? Maybe you're just bored or stressed or just eating because the clock told you to. So these are all questions that you need to be asking yourself in order to be more mindful about the fact of, am I really hungry? So there's a lot of factors that interfere with our ability to check if we're really hungry or not. And the number one thing is hunger suppressing chemicals. So most of us drink caffeine in the morning, which is a hunger suppressing chemical. And then some of you actually drink caffeine all day. So this is something that is interfering with your ability to check in whether or not you're hungry or not, because those chemicals do suppress your hunger signals. The other one is simple carbs. So when we eat simple carbs, we talked about in part 1, our blood sugar spikes, right? So it's supposed to send those signals to our body that our blood sugar is high, our glycogen is being replenished, and we should no longer be hungry. Now it takes some time, for your stomach and your mouth to absorb enough glycogen to send that signal, which, happens a lot where there's that delay and you end up eating too much because there's a delay between, when your body's able to break down that glycogen and kind of send those signals to the brain. But with simple carbs, you're consuming and your body may not be getting that signal. Maybe you do overeat and then you get the signal. So you stop eating. But then that glycogen burns up really quickly, or it gets stored very quickly. So then you have that sugar crash, you have that carb crash. And then what happens? Your blood sugar is low and your body's sending those signals again that you're hungry, even though maybe you just ate 20 minutes ago. So that's another interfering factor, is that you still have food in your stomach. You couldn't possibly be hungry, but because your blood sugar spiked too high and then after that got too low, then it's sending you those fake signals. Dehydration, this happens a lot for me. So if I have a really hard workout and maybe 10, 20 minutes afterwards, I feel really hungry. But I've gotten into the habit of kind of forcing myself to drink at least 8 ounces of water after I'm done working out, and then check in with myself after I drink to make sure, am I really hungry or not? And 9 times out of 10, I'm really not. It was really just the fact that I was dehydrated from my workout. So dehydration can kind of send that fake signal of hunger when you really are dehydrated. And then that visual smell exposure to food. So I know you've experienced this. So you've been watching TV, maybe you just ate, a huge meal and you're so stuffed, and then you see a commercial for like Cinnabon and you're like, oh man, I could eat Cinnabon right now. But you really are not hungry, but just the fact that you had that visual cue sent that signal for you to desire eating that. And the same thing with, you just ate and then you walk by maybe an ice cream store and you smell those waffle cones and you're like, oh man, I could have a waffle cone right now, even though you know you're not really hungry and you would be overeating if you made that choice. So, you know, we have two different hunger systems. We have our body hunger and we have our brain hunger. So sometimes those systems are not connected, or they don't connect fast enough for us to make a good decision. So the good tactic here is just to give it time. So maybe check in with yourself and go, okay, maybe let me give it some time. I might not actually be hungry. It might be one of these other things. So try and address those first, give it a little bit of time, and then check back in and see if you're really hungry. So we all know that fight or flight is a big issue with the amount of stress levels that we have on a daily basis. And no, you don't have to have a saber-toothed tiger running after you to create this stress. We all live stressful lives. We're all running around doing a million things at the same time, and our bodies end up getting into that fight or flight mode constantly, day in and day out. So no, your life doesn't have to be threatened in order to be fight or flight. It could just even be a little bit of stress, you know, from work or from family, and your body can switch over into fight or flight mode. So what happens during fight or flight mode? Your biological system is looking for comfort. So it is going to send you food signals when you're stressed, because your body wants to be comforted. It's stressed out, and it's found out in the past that food is a comfort. So it's going to start sending you those signals. Fight or flight also overrides your brain's capacity to make thoughtful decisions. So think about it. So if you're stressed out and you're really, you know, threatened or stressed, you're reacting very quickly. You're kind of knee-jerk reacting, right? That's what your body is. Your brain is just focused. It's ready to react immediately. It's not sitting back, taking time, like you're looking at the saber-toothed tiger and going, there's a saber-toothed tiger there. I wonder what it wants. Let me think about my options. No, your fight or flight response kicks in and you go run or you fight. Those are the only two choices. It makes it very basic for you. So it's a knee-jerk reaction just to make something happen, to make a decision. So this is unfortunate because it can affect your choices when it comes to food. So if you're in fight or flight mode and you live a very stressed out life, you may just make knee-jerk reactions about food. And then also stress releases those stress hormones, cortisol and glucocorticoids. So glucocorticoids increase your desire for glucose. Again, it's looking for energy because it's stress. So it thinks maybe I'm going to have to run from something or fight something. I need energy. I need quick energy. So I want glucose. And then also this cortisol sends the body signals to say, hey, we need to store fat because I'm not sure how long we're going to have to hide from this saber-toothed tiger. I may be up this tree for 2 days. So I'm going to need to store fat in order to survive. So those are those caveman mechanisms that we talked about as well in part 1. So what's a way to kind of get past this? I know you're probably thinking, well, how can I overcome all this biology that's going on? You know, you're talking about hormones, you're talking about, you know, part of this brain that just kicks in and I can't even help it. There is a way to kind of intercede with the biological response, and it's very simple, actually. It's slowing that biological system down. So you notice when you get stressed, you kind of, you know, your blood pressure goes up, your heart rate's going a little faster, you kind of hear your blood, you know, going in your ears. You get maybe a little out of breath or a little kind of shaky, you know. So all of those things, if you can kind of intercede and slow some of those physiological systems down, then the brain can get the signal like, oh, maybe this person isn't feeling threatened or stressed anymore, and I can turn the system off in the brain. So it's basically tricking your brain. And how do you do it? You take lots of deep breaths. So I wish there was something more complicated to tell you, but there isn't. It's just taking a pause, getting away from the situation as much as you can, and inhaling and exhaling. So just slowing those systems down. I want to get my heart rate down. I want to slow down that process, slow down my breathing so I can trick my brain into thinking, oh, there's no threat anymore because I don't have to breathe as hard. I don't have to pump my heart that hard. So but you need to slow those thoughts down so you're not constantly getting into the cycle of just reinvigorating that stress symptom and signal by your thoughts. So one of the techniques is you use all 5 senses. So if something is stressing you out, either visually or audioly, which is, one of the two, probably somebody's saying something that's making you mad, or somebody sent you an email, or just a situation. So I would suggest using the other senses to kind of overcome and override that. So a pleasurable sensation like, rubbing a blanket, or if you have an animal, this is a good technique. So petting a dog or a cat, or, maybe closing off what you're hearing, the things that are stressing you out, and you're hearing it, putting some headphones on and listening to some, nice relaxing music or meditation clip or something like that. And then get rid of distractions. So you need to focus down on getting those systems slowed down. So get rid of distractions, kind of get yourself away from those stressful situations, and get the physiological part of it slowed down so you can trick your brain into turning off that stress response. Now we're going to A, we just covered B. A, assess your food. So what are you craving? Now that you determine that you're hungry, what are you craving? What's available around you? What is the best choice? So use all your senses, look around, explore, think about it, and then think about, is this what your body needs or what your mind needs? So you may be craving something sweet because you're stressed out. That's not what your body needs right now. Your body needs a good balanced meal. So there's a lot of interfering factors in assessment, of course. So portions is a big one. So we can't really assess our foods if we're not open to looking at them and investigating what is really going on with them. So, if you're going to a buffet, or if you're going through a drive-through and you're getting like the super size, this is going to interfere in your ability to determine whether or not this is what your body needs. So if you're just making the decision to order the super size because it's cheaper, or you feel like you're saving money, then you're not really honoring your body and what the body needs. So actually flipping the label over on your foods and looking at the serving size, or looking at the calories, or looking at the carbs and the sugar. And then we understand that, that's a part of that is convenience and it's habit, and, running through a drive-through is quicker than actually preparing a meal, but it's also interfering in your ability to determine whether or not this is actually what you need. And then if you're not prepared, then you're not going to be able to make a good decision. So if you get yourself into a situation where you don't have access to any healthy choices and you didn't prepare ahead of time, then that's interfering with your ability to assess what you need. So maybe you assess you need an apple, but you put yourself in a situation where you can't get an apple and you can only get French fries. So you see what I'm saying is your behavior is interfering with your ability to assess and actually make a good choice. S is slow down. So when you are actually eating, slow down. And I know this is really hard, and it's been ingrained in us to hurry through because we've got other things to do. That's why drive-throughs are on every corner, because we're all about convenience and quick. But my argument is, if you're gonna eat it, then you might as well take the time to enjoy it. And then you're also giving yourself some time, your stomach some time, your intestines some time, to send those signals to your brain in order to let you know that you should stop. So if we're rushing, we're not giving our bodies enough time to get those signals. It takes about 20 minutes for your stomach and your intestines and all of those processes that are going into play when you start eating to send those signals to your brain. So if you're scarfing down food in 5 minutes, then you're not getting any signals. You're getting signals way after you've already eaten, and then maybe at that point you've overeaten. So there is an acronym here. It's STOP. So halfway through, we suggest that you stop. So if you have a plate in front of you, just stop. And actually, one of the approaches that I take is, especially if I'm eating out, then I go ahead and ask for a box up front. And then when they bring me the food, I go ahead and just half my food and put it in the box and put it aside. And then I'm assuring that I'm stopping halfway through. So then I'm getting myself that time to stop and assess, am I really hungry anymore? Am I satisfied? Do I need more? So just take a time, take a minute to check in and proceed or not. Investigate. So full versus satisfied. Do not need to eat until you're full. That is actually detrimental to your gut health and your body's ability to digest properly. So, but we also don't want you to get super, super hungry, because then at that point you're hangry and you may be making poor decisions because your blood sugar is too low and you just want to eat and you don't care what it is at that point. So try and stay between on a 1 to 5 scale, 1 being super hangry and 5 being really stuffed. In between, no extreme. So you want to be around a 3 at neutral, and then 4 for satisfied if you're eating, and then wait until a 2 in order to eat. So you don't want to wait till 1, but you certainly don't want to eat when you're a 3, or you certainly don't want to eat when you're a 4. So, and use a simple 1 to 5 scale to kind of assess where you're at. And then chew. So do you know how many times you chew an individual bite of food? You probably don't, because you've probably never counted. And I do this experiment all the time when I give this presentation, and I give everybody the same size food. Let's say a grape, everybody takes a grape, and have them all eat it. And then I ask them, how many times did you chew? And most of them at first say, I don't know, I just ate it. And then we try it again, and I have them count how many times they chew. And it's amazing the spectrum of how many times people chew. Some people chew 3 times, some people chew 33 times, just that same grape. So we all have different ways, different habits that we've created with how many times we chew our food. And I love this story because these World War II prison camps were in a prison, and they actually made a pact to chew their individual bites, so taking 1 bite and chew that 1 bite 150 times. So every bite they took was 150 chews. Now that's pretty crazy. I mean, you're basically emaciating your food, and that probably wasn't very nice on the jaw. But these 4 men were one of the few who survived that prison camp and actually did not starve to death. They didn't get more food. They just chewed their food and chewed each bite much more than everybody else there. So basically, they tricked their brains into thinking that they were not starving, even though nutritionally they were. So they've done some subsequent studies after that and found that this is actually the case. So research shows that 30 to 40 chews is actually the optimal amount to chew each bite. So you must be thinking, that's a lot. And how do I kind of keep track of that? You have to be mindful. So that means you can't be distracted in doing other work and talking to people. You actually have to kind of really check in and chew and count. And once you kind of get in the habit of that, it just starts to become more natural. So I challenge you to kind of experiment with this and actually eat an entire meal in this way. first of all, you'll see that you slow way down. And then also you'll see that you'll reach a point in that meal, probably way before your plate is empty, where you're just kind of done eating. So you're sending those signals and you're allowing for that time for your brain to give the brain, or the body, give the brain your signal that you are actually satisfied. And then research shows that people who do this, who chew their individual bites 30 to 40 times, eat 1/3 fewer calories than people who don't. So it does kind of create that trick that says, I've eaten enough, I need to stop, even though calorically you may be eating much less than you normally do. And then also it's shown that chewing triggers a hormone that basically tells your brain, I'm full. And then also it reduces the hormones that tell you that you're hungry. And S, savor your food. So like I said before, if you're going to eat it, enjoy it. You need to honor your body's needs. So, but you need to also satisfy both your need and the enjoyment. So the nutritional and the enjoyment part. So just because you're eating healthy doesn't mean it's disgusting food. And likewise, just because you're eating unhealthy doesn't mean that it's absolutely good food. So here's why. This may backfire on you. So once you change your nutrition, your taste buds change. So once you kind of detox from the sugars, so sugar again kind of creates that, we covered this in part 1, creates that dopamine release. So basically your brain gets addicted to sugar, and your tongue, it gets kind of, builds a tolerance basically. So anything that isn't sweet, it tastes kind of bland. So once you kind of detox from the sugar and stop eating sugary foods, you'll notice that the more bland foods actually are a lot more flavorful, and that you are kind of tasting flavors that you never really noticed before because your tongue was so masked and looking for a sugary sweet taste. So I actually did this experiment myself. I used to love Taco Bell. I used to eat Taco Bell like every day. And then obviously I changed my nutrition and did not have it for a very long time. Well, I decided to do an experiment, and I went through the drive-thru Taco Bell, and I decided I'm going to eat this meal mindfully. So, taking all these techniques that we talked about, the checking in, the chewing, the being mindful, not being distracted. So I got a meal that I usually ate before back in my Taco Bell days, and parked, and then turned off everything and focused down and tried to eat the Taco Bell mindfully. I got about 3 bites in, and I could not even go any further. It was so bland. It just tasted like cardboard processed. I don't know what it was just horrible. And this is the stuff that I used to crave and love, and just, I thought it tasted so amazing. But now that my nutrition has changed, and then I actually ate it mindfully, I noticed it actually didn't taste that great. So this technique may backfire on you. You may find out that the foods that you thought you loved actually aren't very good at all. So we covered the basics of mindful eating. So we're going to stop there. And in part 3, we're going to cover a lot more strategies to combat your inner caveman. So this is Captain Lincoln with Fireteam Whiskey. And we just covered part 2 of your Nutritional Psychology Warrior Wellness seminar. And I will see you in part 3.